Hey there, pharmacists and healthcare provider friends. Thank you for joining me as we wrap up week 2 of this video series in observance of American Pharmacist Month. So, as you might have heard in our last video of the series, we talked about some of the 5 most essential resources that you need if you are a healthcare provider who is interested in becoming a freelance health content writer. As a quick recap, those 5 resources were information, i.e., knowledge about what content marketing is. You need writing skills. That's the second thing. You need to be able to demonstrate those writing skills in the form of a portfolio, which is item 3. You also need business support and you need mentorship. But going back to that question of, or back to that element of having a strong portfolio, that being a really key and critical resource for your success as a freelance health content writer, I wanted to dive a little bit more into that specific tool today, because one of the questions that I often get is, if a person is kind of going through a program where they're creating a portfolio, or maybe you're taking a DIY approach to getting into health content writing, and so you're working on a portfolio on your own, a natural question is, well, how do I know if my portfolio is actually good enough? Like, how do I objectively know whether the content, the articles, the blog posts that are a part of my portfolio are actually a good reflection or a great reflection of my ability as a health content writer? So we're going to talk more about the answer to that question today. Before we jump in, as a reminder, hello, hi, I'm Megan Freeland. I'm a public health pharmacist by training and have worked as a health content strategist for the past 5 or so years. I also run the Health Professionals to Health Writers program, which teaches US-based pharmacists and healthcare providers how to replace a portion of their primary income through freelance health content writing. So thanks for joining me today. Whether you're catching this live or on the replay, you can feel free to drop your questions, comments, takeaways, insights, all that good stuff. Okay, so going back to our question of how we know our portfolio is good enough, there are 3 things that you need to be paying attention to when you are evaluating your portfolio and the assets that are included within it. The first thing is very foundational: grammar, spelling, writing ability, like the foundations. Is the quality of the content that you've written, does it reflect a mastery of whatever language you're writing in? So if you are writing for English speaking populations, then is your grasp on English language writing strong? And is that reflected through your writing in that portfolio? Same question can be applied for any other language that you might be writing in or audience that you might be writing for. You want to make sure that as a writer, you have the foundations of writing down. If you feel not so confident in your basic or foundational writing ability, one of the things that I suggest to folks who are interested in health content writing, but might not be quite ready for health professionals to health writers because they don't have that foundational comfort level with writing, is to look into a lot of free resources that are available online. So, well, I shouldn't say free, but some of them are free, some of them are low cost. But if you look in on websites like Coursera or LinkedIn Learning, a book that some people also find valuable is called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. These are a couple of places where you might find resources that can help you build up that foundational understanding of English language writing in particular, that will be important for you because that's the foundation that you're going to have to build upon. So that's the first thing: grammar, spelling, foundations of writing. The second thing you want to look at is the answer to this question: are you helping to solve a health problem or answer a health question in the samples that are within your portfolio? So the underlying, from an educational standpoint, the intent of health content writing is to help the reader or whoever is consuming that piece be able to answer a health question they have or solve a health problem that they have. So naturally, you want to make sure that the samples that are in your portfolio would help someone do that. So that's like a question you can ask yourself to see whether what you have in your portfolio might be strong. And then the other question is, and the third thing to look at is, are you speaking to a clear targeted audience? So one of the challenges that I think we face as healthcare providers is that in a lot of cases, we don't have writing experience at all. That's just across the board. That is a common background. A common background is I have zero writing experience. Okay. Even though some people who do have writing experience, that writing experience is not necessarily the same as health content writing. It might be experience with more traditional medical writing that is like very scientific in nature, geared towards a health professions audience, or just like research style information. So maybe your audience isn't even a specific person, but maybe it's just like you've written like a journal club article or a summary or a memo or a write-up of some sort, and there isn't really even a clear audience. And in that case, it might be challenging to kind of move over into a more health communication style of writing, i.e. health content writing, where you are really writing to a specific person and helping that person with all of their characteristics and backgrounds, etc., writing content that is tailored to them and to their experience that is helping them solve that health problem. So a third thing that's important to look at when you're evaluating your portfolio is the content that you've included in the portfolio directed towards a clear and targeted audience. Now, that's not to say that if you have other items in your portfolio that are maybe not as specific to health content writing as they could be, that you're like SOL and you can't use it at all. But remember, the question is, how do I know if my portfolio is like good enough? And the way to ensure that it is better and that it is good enough is to make sure that these three boxes are checked. Solid grasp on grammar and spelling, clearly helping solve a health problem or answer a health question, and speaking to a very clear and targeted audience. So a couple of strategies that can help you with your portfolio and help you feel proud of your portfolio. One is accepting good enough. I phrased this conversation as, is my portfolio good enough, for a reason. I didn't say, is it perfect? Is it out of this world? Is it the best thing I've ever done? It doesn't need to be all that. It needs to be good enough. So I encourage you to accept good enough and not to spend so much time and energy and effort seeking perfection, because especially if you are a new health content writer, it is going to be virtually impossible for you to achieve perfection with a starter portfolio. That is just not something that is reasonable. It's not even reasonable for experienced writers. It's absolutely not for a new writer. So really, really channeling that good enough mantra, which I know can be challenging for us pharmacists and healthcare providers who tend to be perfectionists and overachievers. With your portfolio, that perfectionism and that need to overachieve can easily stifle you, because it can keep you from feeling confident in your work and keep you from actually going out and trying to find real clients as a health content writer, because you're so worried about your portfolio not being perfect. So that's just my 2 cents, okay? Don't chase perfection, because you're not going to achieve it, and ultimately it's going to hold you back. My early work, like 2016 writing, it's cringy, okay? When I go back and look at some of the things that I wrote, I'm like, oh, it felt better back then in the moment. But that's the point. Like, it still got the job done. I still got clients. I still progressed and moved forward as a writer because I was willing to put myself out there early on, even though it was not perfect, and it's still not perfect. It was only through that practice, though, that I was able to progress. So sharing that so that you can keep that in mind as it relates to your journey as well. So that's one strategy. Second strategy, this is like a practical tip. Always read your writing out loud, like with your voice out loud, especially as you're doing like proofreading or edits or just reviewing to make sure things are looking good. Reading in your head is like obviously a thing that can be helpful, but reading out loud will help you catch errors. It will help you determine if there are any places where the flow of your writing is a little bit off, where you find that, oh, maybe I should like move this section up here or move this line down here to make the information flow better. It'll help you identify whether there are any gaps, whether you are requiring your reader to make assumptions that they might not know because you're a healthcare provider, but they're not. All of these things can be more easily flagged if you're reading out loud. The reason is when you are writing an article or a blog post, you're probably going through that article and blog post like several times. And eventually your eyes are going to be like, I cannot even look at this anymore. Like I can't even objectively look at this piece anymore because I've just been looking at it so much. Reading it out loud can like take you out of it for a minute and help you identify whether there are any of those sticky points that we just talked about. So that's a strategy that can be helpful for doing some good evaluation of your portfolio and the work in it. A third strategy, make sure that you know your audience. And one of the reasons it's really important to know your audience, i.e., who is reading this blog post. If I am, it's October, so it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If I am writing an article about the importance of or the differences between types of breast cancer screenings, well, who am I writing that for? Am I writing it for a person with breasts, like an adult who might be eligible for breast cancer screenings? Am I writing it for a physician? Am I writing it for a potential caregiver? Am I writing it for, like, who am I writing it for? Because that is going to determine how I approach the conversation. And it's also going to help me understand what questions about that topic the reader might have. So the questions that a person who could be getting a breast exam would have might be different than the questions a caregiver would have. That might be different from the questions a healthcare provider might have. So I'm able to anticipate the questions that the reader will have, which means I can incorporate the answers to those questions in advance as I'm writing the article. And that helps me make sure the article is as accurate as possible, as relevant, as useful, as valuable as possible for the intended reader. But if I don't know who the intended reader is, I don't know what they care about, what matters to them, can't anticipate what questions that might have, it's going to make it really hard for me as the writer to create a blog post that's as valuable to them as possible. So know your audience and anticipate the questions or concerns that they might have. And then the last tip here is another practical one, and that's hire an editor if you can. Editors work with writers to help them craft a final piece that is as clear and usable and valuable to the reader as possible. So as the writer, you're the person who's like gathering all the information, putting all the information together to the best of your ability. But then the editor comes in as a fresh set of eyes and looks subjectively at what you have worked on to make sure that the intended message is going to get across in the best way to the intended audience. So in that way, an editor is really a partner to the writer. And when you work as a freelance health content writer, oftentimes you are going to be working with an editor who might be associated with the company that you're writing for. Sometimes you won't, but oftentimes you will. And so hiring an editor might be one way to make sure that your portfolio blog posts are as strong as possible. Now, if you are a student who has enrolled in the Health Professionals to Health Writers program, you already have editorial support baked into the program. You work with an editor directly inside the program who offers feedback and revisions, etc. And so that's really going to help you take your portfolio to the next level and make sure it's something that you can really be proud of. But again, even if you're taking a DIY approach to health content writing, having an editor in your pocket might be something that is useful to you. So hopefully these strategies were helpful in helping you understand what it really means for your portfolio to be good enough, not perfect, but good enough, and then some strategies that you can implement in order to help it be as good as possible. So enrollment for health professionals to health writers is still going on for the January cohort. It will not be going on forever. So if you have not applied, you do want to do that as soon as possible. If you are interested in applying, you can just comment right in the comments, and I will follow up with you in messages with some information about how to submit your application. As a reminder, the program is currently limited to US-based pharmacists and healthcare providers. And the next cohort will start in January. It's about halfway full now. So be sure to comment right if you're interested in applying. And I'll see y'all next week for the final week of the American Pharmacist Month content series.